There is no other real fulfillment possible. Here we are together. Thank you so much, Pam. Together with our King, with Martin's words amongst us, and a mighty challenge. Do we have a courage? The courage that's required to let our thinking be completely different? To be divinely inspired? To have a complete absence of opinion? That would be a new world. A complete absence of opinion. Do we have the courage to not use all our book learning when we're looking at something? This morning, to honor all of you, to honor the service, I decided to try out this radiant seeing, this radiant perception. And I went out into my beautiful garden and I radiantly viewed the ground cover there. It was really quite amazing how the lime green of the creeping Jenny just leaped out at me. I've never seen lime green like that. And it's been there all along. And the purple flowers were so purple. The living essence of those plants were singing with my radiant view of them. We're supposed to be the crowning creation. This is part of what that means. We radiate outward with our eyes because our mind is still, our mind is settled in the court of the King. We rest in complete assurance that that is so. I have a brilliant friend. She's an Ayurvedic practitioner and her name is Erica. She's studying for her doctorate of Ayurvedic medicine. This takes some mind attention. So it's a very complex system. And she asked me what I was doing, and I told her I was giving service on Sunday. And I told her what the process was. We would read from Martin's words, and then we would speak. And she said, "Aren't you lucky to have such a starting point?" And it actually made me cry in her presence. Aren't we lucky to have such a starting point? Most of the thinking is done for us. This ability to let the mind rest in the comfort of the kingdom of our King brings forth, you could call it new thought, but it's actually thought that hasn't been on this earth for a very long time. And it's thought that the earth is just literally screaming for in these days. I can hear the screams. Please, somebody do something different. And here we are. We have been bathed in something different 7 times 7. I did a little math. Do you know it's been almost 90 years since Yolanda first spoke words of truth and wisdom? Almost 89 years. And just look what's been gathered together. The purity of the people that's been gathered together. We're all leaders, and we know we're leaders. Remember that ad, Leaders Wanted, men and women of the highest integrity. So here we are, us leaders. And we're responsible to create an atmosphere that liberates other people. We're not responsible to tell them who they are, what they're doing wrong, or et cetera, et cetera. I think that could be classified as opinion. We're responsible to liberate them from their own thinking processes. We bring forth the elegance of God's design. There's another famous quote by Lao Tzu. Leadership is best when the people say, we did this ourselves. And that is our job, to let the mind reorganize itself, clean itself up, let the opinions go elsewhere, wherever bad opinions go, or good opinions, and bring forth the inspiration to let others inspire themselves, and so they inspire their world. That's our job, and none of us would say we haven't been trained for that. It's such a pleasure to be with you this morning. It's a pleasure to gaze upon you and to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. It's indeed a pleasure to speak as one. Speak these words as one. We have a shared spiritual history together, all of us that I can see on this screen. And we've seen many cycles that have been broken, looking at the past spiritual history. And I was thinking of the saddest words in the Bible during the crucifixion, not because of that aspect of the crucifixion, but because what wasn't seen by people. Just 2 words, he wept. He wept. And in these words we just shared, coming at the end of Martin's ministry, some other sad words, 3 words. It was spoiled. And both those statements have to do with the carrying through of the word. Obviously, not all was lost, not all was spoiled, because there is a remnant of the spiritual body, the Lord's body on earth, that remains vibrant and open to the spirit of the King. And that's why we gather. That's why we gather, to articulate this all together as a collective. And it is the collective carrying through that lands in our lap. And no matter who articulates it, words of truth in times like this, it is that collective. It is because there's evidence of the presence of the King on earth through people. And the words that we read, these words, yes, words spoken, words of truth, of love, of life, because the one who spoke them lived with the presence of the King within. And that's the invitation. That is the gift to be received, to be received. And I was thinking how appropriate that word is, receive. We receive guests into our home. John and I recently have had various ones come and be with us of like mind and like spirit, and sharing in the reality of true friendship, speaking these things. Well, a guest in your home comes and goes, but the receiving is the receiving of the King into my house of being, so that this is his temple. This is where he lives. This is where he speaks through me this morning. And his eyes look upon the world. We see many things, but it's that radiant vision. We see radiantly. We see good and bad and horrific and such unnecessary destruction on earth because there wasn't a receiving of the gift. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold the reward of the wicked, it is said. And I looked that up because there's more to that. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. Making the Lord thy habitation. He lives and breathes and is in my temple, in my house of being. In the course of the last couple of years, I've seen some people, close in people, that it might be went into a dark place. And, you know, there wasn't anything that I could do to pull them out of that, no matter how inspirational I spoke to them or attunements I could give. But it's the person that had to bring themselves back. And I've seen that with some close people. I'm thinking of ones, maybe you have seen that too. And you say, they're back. He's back. She's back. And there's rejoicing. There is rejoicing. There's not any opinion about what went wrong, what went before, but there's rejoicing of what is now. Who's here now? That's the rejoicing. And then as it was put in this service, there comes a point where there's a point of no return. I was thinking of that in the beginning, the garden, and the fall in consciousness, where the consciousness of mankind as a collective consciousness fell because there was the thought of doing one's own self-centered thinking and getting without honoring the Lord. And so there was the hiding. But the safe thing that was in place was the flaming sword that kept safe, and the cherubim that kept safe the garden, kept safe the tree of life. Well, in this day, there's evidence of the rising in consciousness, and we see it with many other people in the world. There's this rising of spiritual consciousness because the remnant has been letting the radiation do the work, and that is rising. The spiritual consciousness is rising. And so now the experience of being in heaven, the experience of radiant living, is such an emphasis in our lives that there's no going back to that other state. That we've come into the experience of garden. It was protected before by the flaming sword, but it's the truth of love, the fire of love that is our passion. And we find ourselves in that state of consciousness. And there's great rejoicing. There's great rejoicing in being together and articulating these things. So we would love to open it up for further radiant conversation.
Pamela and Laura, holy, holy, holy. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant light. What radiance we have shared in this hour and continue to share in this moment, this gift, this present. It dawns on me that I have sometimes thought of the shining of the light as something that was coming at me, which would make it a little difficult to see. I've thought of the shining of the light as something diffuse that happens when you flip on a light switch. Or even as the sun rises over the mountain out my back door each moment and begins to shine the light that makes the shadows and then springs the green into being. What I'm seeing and thinking of in this moment is that the spirit of the King shining radiantly through the Lucifer that I insist my mind provide shines out into my world. I then see that world differently, not because there's light shining into my eyes, but because it's shining out through them. What a simple flip in consciousness. of Lucifer. What a precious setting you two have provided for all of us and the world this morning. I am so thrilled to have been here, to be here with each of you, my dear, dear, dear friends. Thank you.
I would offer my thanksgiving to Laura and Pamela. What a precious hour this has been. And I love the spirit and the passion offered through both of you. I feel the spirit of womanhood reawakening on earth. And this is our time, as Yorana had said. The spirit of the woman must lead the way in coming out of this chaos, this fallen state, since she led the way down. And in this time together, I feel such an honoring of the female, not because of female lives matter or Me Too or any self-importance, but because of the love, the true love of the King. And that became very evident in both of you, passionately. And we as women must prepare the way for manhood to be honored and loved, because here is the power of love seeking to manifest honor through the male. And the responsiveness of the female allows this magnification and the expression of life into the body. So what a beautiful opportunity for us, all of us together, to really take stock of what has happened over these past 89 years, you said. Now is the time, and the time is growing short. And I love the emphasis on the fact of no more judgment, releasing all opinions, because that's what makes us trip over one another. We have different opinions, so suddenly something comes up that says, well, I can't agree with that. When the agreement is not designed to be in that realm, but in the heaven, which I am here to bring into the earth. So in tranquility of mind and heart, I can receive anybody's stuff and not be disturbed. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much. I just love this time together. Womanhood is a joy, not a trial.
Laura and Pamela, thank you very much for sharing yourselves with us today. It's been wonderful to hear your voices in all senses of the word voice, your revelation of the word in this moment. Laura, I think you mentioned, both of you did, but I know, Laura, you mentioned radiant perception, and I did some of that myself last night, and I was observing that what I was perceiving was a scattered vibration coming to me, I believe, from ones that I'm connected with in the world. And I think it may have to do something with the pandemic. You have some people who are happy that we've reached a certain point where there's a degree of normalcy, but there are other people who I think are still fearful. And I was perceiving an emotion of hopelessness in that respect. And of course, we know that the virus has various variants that are still in play. So what I was observing was a kind of a mixture of these different vibrations. Yolanda used to speak of patterns, vibrational patterns. So yeah, this perception that we have is very valuable for observing what's going on in the world or what may be going on in the world. So I think we can talk with ones we know about how to deal with these things, depending on our position one way or the other. And of course, in connection with this, there are various effects that the pandemic has had economically and socially, and in other ways. So there is a state of flux and uncertainty, but even though we can discuss these issues, we do have the great gift of being open to the Lord, to life, to source, and receiving the message that comes through to and through us in every moment, to receive, as it was put, the heavenly essences, and to translate that or manifest them in natural ways, natural to us, so that we can be a blessing to the world, to those we know, and to the Lord. So thank you very much. It's wonderful to be with you all.
Pamela, Laura, thank you. I've been very moved by the depth of what you both offered and the uniqueness of your own individual passion and spirit, which is beautiful, actually, very beautiful, and not the same at all, and yet one thing. Only with thine eyes shalt thou see the reward of the wicked. Not with thy emotions, not with the entanglement, not with the reaction, not with the response. And Proverbs 3, trust in the Lord with all thy might. Lean not unto thine own understanding. But in all things, I forget the exact words, but it takes something to stand in this moment with you radiantly, actually. This is another level for me, which I embrace gladly. What I wanted to say is that I have an absolute responsibility. I remember the command which says, not to let anything into my holy place that would work an abomination or a lie. Just living that truth alone, moment to moment, is a full-time job. And of these few words that I've been speaking, I know there are the correlations are very particular, very specific, and not only show what needs to be done, but how. The invitation is to receive the gift and let this temple be a place of the king's habitation, so that he can articulate through this particular instrument. And therefore, I am the guardian of this temple, and I have something to do, as we all do, not to let something into our holy place individually, collectively, that works abominations and lies. It's actually quite simple. And it's all housed in the love for the king. First, last, and always. Thank you.
I think today we've just had the most exquisite example of Lucifer, the bright and morning star, shining through us and amongst us. And how strange that the mind of man thinks of Lucifer as Satan. It just gives such indication of how lost man is. But here we are, the bright and morning stars, looking with radiant eyes at our world, holding our worlds in the bonds of love. When there is abomination of desolation, we let the Spirit of the King pour forth into our worlds. And I agree that there is no greater joy than this, to be together and to represent our King. Laura and Pamela, I am delighted so in your expression. Thank you.
I can feel the intensity of the current of the Spirit moving strongly in my own body temple, in my heart. Laura and Pamela, you are so beautiful. What a supreme pleasure to just view you on this screen through these eyes as you read and spoke. I don't think I've ever seen you before. At least it was certainly very new this morning. Being in the kingdom of the King, feeling very much present in his court, invited into his household on occasion. I've seen that there is the presence of one we would call the Queen, always present there as well. Not known to any great degree on earth, because his kingdom and his court and his household and his family hasn't been known to be a reality. But living in his kingdom, it becomes known. She becomes known as he becomes known. To me, to us. In the story of the king, as it's recorded of his time incarnate as Jesus, there were 3 Marys present that are referred to a great degree in that story. Mary, his mother, gets a lot of attention. Mary Magdalene. A lot of opinions about her being written in various books these days. And there is another Mary. Mary of Bethany, she was named then. Yolanda, one who served with the king over the ages in a very direct sense, has told us about her and her spirit. And so, being in the kingdom, her presence and her spirit becomes increasingly vivid as well. I feel her spirit present here this morning. As is the spirit of the one that was in form as Mary Magdalene, and the spirit of the one who gave birth to the man Jesus, his mother. All these 3 spirits of divine woman are present here this morning in the court of the household of the king. And they're one spirit, one with his spirit, even as I find that I know him and know her because I begin to know my own spirit as one with his. One spirit unwrapped, the gift unwrapped. Even if it's not really unwrapped fully yet, we might say it is wrapped in transparent wrapping. So we can look through the wrapping and see the gift and experience something of the thrill that yet remains when it's fully unwrapped and is right here. If that happens to be where we are, anyone here or out there, this gift is for all, not just 36 of us on here on the line. As a man incarnate on earth, I've known wickedness in my own soul. So it's not just the wickedness out there, the reward of the wicked. I've experienced the reward of the wicked. It helped wake me up to this extent. It's a good thing to experience the reward of the wicked. Might encourage the opening of the gift. Indeed, it did and does. But the main thing is this Almighty Spirit and presence and the reality of what we call the kingdom, heaven, the heavenly reality that we have an opportunity to live in every day, and the exquisite heaven. that you two brought and magnified, which you know so well, obviously, in your own life. How precious to experience the spirit of the Queen present with the King, and always attentive to that great spirit, that it might be brought to the forefront and made known to men and women on earth, and that there can be freedom and release from the bondage of wickedness, and release into the joy and the wonder and the ever new vision of heaven right here, right now. It's been so exquisite being with you and everybody else, letting this new thing appear this morning in the fire of his love and his great giving. Thank you.
David, your words touch our hearts there. And I don't know about you, but a tear came to my eye when you mentioned Mary of Bethany. The depth of what we can share together as one. And we may see reflections of ourselves here on the screen, but actually see all of us as one, as being a part of the wheel of God on earth, of his radiation, of the Lord's radiation. So I give thanks for the time, Pam and Laura. I give thanks for the time that we're all together. And let's hold dear. I can spend all day long on this call. And at the same time, we have lives to live to let radiation, let love radiate. So let's continue in this way, holding dear what we shared,
Steve,
holding fast. Yes.
I wonder if Pamela and Laura might have a few things to say near the end before we close.
Yes, thank you. I have so appreciated this part of the service. It's wonderful to hear you all. I've been thinking about protection. The world is in a very tough place, and we are at least some of the ones that are going to change that. That's going to require some protection of us. I have always been very, very thankful for the protection of the men in this ministry, the ones who hold dear and speak highly of the women in this ministry. It has always been my experience to be acknowledged in that way and have men around that serve and protect. I thank you for that. I also have been thinking during this time, I love what you said, Davina, about it takes something. You bet your boots it takes something. Even after 89 years, it takes something. If we were all doing the very, very most ultimate job, the world wouldn't be the way it is. The world would be different. So I appreciate the humility that's been spoken, along with the protection of a clean consciousness, because it is our own clean consciousness that keeps us protected. It doesn't matter what else is around. If we insist on messing around in the trenches, we'll get hurt. So wonderful to hear the bright lights. In John, the book of John, verse 14, it says, "And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us in truth and in glory." It is the word making flesh that does the job. My word made into flesh. It is says that the body is made up of 75% water. That water is made holy by my thinking when it comes from the King. The flesh is made holy and dwells among that which is not holy. And it's no problem. It's easy. I have friends here at Sun Peaks that you don't say the word God or anything related to it, but they say to me when I express my idea of the future, because they're all talking about the future, so it's a wonderful time. It's going to be a whole new life. It's going to be absolutely wonderful. And they say, oh, Laura, I wish we had your confidence. But of course we are confident because we know we are the ones doing that job. We are in the end game here, folks. It's time to hit a home run. And God always wins, so we can rest in that reality and continue in our own great flesh and radiant thinking.
Thank you, Laura. I was thinking of the protection as well. And I appreciate that coming right towards the end there with Steve and David and Davina, the guardians of that protection. We couldn't speak of these things in a general audience, obviously. They'd be trampled on, they'd be interpreted by the mind. And that would be spoiled. but we can in this safe container of shared substance, of shared spiritual radiance. And I'm just filled with thanksgiving that it is so. There is this container where we can speak things, that the King of Glory can come in. And all of what has been generated in this time together, it ascends before the throne of God. That is the purpose of this container. Bring it all and let it ascend. And carry this with us and know that we will have the spiritual perception, the right timing, to say the right thing, to do the right thing, because we carry the Spirit of the King within us. And it shines forth in our living. So I'm thankful for this outpouring of which we've all participated to the glory of our King. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Laura. Again, let's unfold what we shared today. Let it continue in our hearts and just then. Our next Temple of Light service will be on July 25th with John Gray focusing your time. And we'll see you then.